Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Today is Sunday evening, the 23rd of September 2018. And tonight we're going to do the In Case You Missed It top gold, silver, crypto, and other news stories for the week ended September 23rd. You won't be able to see the stories and the links to the stories, but I will put up immediately after this podcast the Smaulgld blog post where you'll be able to check out any stories you want to click on and learn more about. But here's some of the stories we're going to cover in somewhat detail. Remember, this is a week in review, but some of these stories we didn't cover during the week, so we got to catch up on them now. One, Trump orders declassification of Russian investigation documents. We're going to talk about that. And in wake of tariffs, China doubles down on credit easing, expansion, and infrastructure spending. We're going to talk about the various tariffs and the strategies at play there. And Kavanaugh faces an accuser as part of his Supreme Court nomination process or confirmation process. And there's breaking news late this evening that maybe even another accuser will come forward at the 11th hour. The New York Times reported that Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General in charge of overseeing the Mueller investigation, they reported that he contemplated wearing a wire to capture 25th Amendment evidence. Trump also, according to Bloomberg and other news sources, is preparing to issue an executive order relating to social media platforms. Crypto has rebounded during the week, and gold and silver nudged higher. Let's take a look now at what happened during the week. So first of all, Smaulgld does this live stream each and every night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it is on YouTube, although some of you may be watching on BitChute or Real Video, or picking it up on Minds or Gab or Twitter, Facebook or Google+, or watching directly from the Smaulgld.com website. But it originates on YouTube as a live stream at 8 o'clock every night. So please subscribe and hit the bell so that you get notifications when we go live each and every night. Now during the week, just to quickly recap what you might have missed, we did a catch-up on Chinese silver demand. What's up with Chinese silver demand? We covered the JP Morgan COMEX vaults, two different videos, and showing that in a week that the COMEX vault shed 3 million ounces of silver. So you want to catch up on that. We also covered the commitment of traders in some detail and the idea that the commercials have been net long for the first time. Also covered the same topic and other topics in an interview with Silver Doctors and James Anderson, so you can check that out. We also covered why stable coins are important to Bitcoin and the entire payment system. We covered when it happened, Trump declassifying the FISA warrant and text messages and so on relating to the Russian investigation. Well, we've got more information on that story coming up later in the show. And we noted that what's up at the U.S. Mint and Silver Eagle sales, that Silver Eagle sales are back, or at least they issued one report, the U.S. Mint did, that they had sold another 500,000 American Silver Eagles to authorized purchasers after having suspended sales for about 2.5 weeks. But they only reported one set of sales and no more during the week. So one sales report last week and no more. So we don't know if that was just what they managed to churn out and they managed to sell that 500,000, or they churned out 500,000, got sold out in that day, and then they're still scrambling to maintain production from the third-party sources. We also did a discussion, online discussion. Is silver an inflation hedge or a speculative metal? That was an open discussion. You want to check that out. Now, if you want to follow along on the questions and comments that we get on the sidebar, you have to see that on YouTube Live, or the replay on YouTube will also show in the sidebar the questions. Now, if you're watching on BitChute or any other platform, it doesn't show the YouTube sidebar, But I do call out the question, so you don't necessarily have to watch it on YouTube to follow what's going on. Also, Russia added 1 million ounces of gold to reserves. That announcement happened earlier in the week, and that was the largest single-month addition to gold reserves since September 2017, bringing their total gold hoard to nearly 2,000 tons. And then we also covered JP Morgan's silver vault twice because it shed a lot of silver 2 days in a row. We're not sure if that is a trend or that's just a blip, but it does belie the argument that JP Morgan is just a pure stacker of silver, because if they were, they wouldn't be selling at these low prices. Leads one to believe that either that's not their silver that left the vault, or if it did leave the vault, that they sold it if it belonged to them, or there's a third possibility that it is indeed theirs and they just moved it somewhere else. That would make sense, but who knows? Okay, we also covered how, and we're still covering tonight in a sense, how political bombshells and turmoils have failed to dent the equity markets for sure, are at all-time highs in those. And also, we have not seen any significant uptick in the gold and silver markets. Quite the contrary. They've gone down the last 3 months and have only recently stabilized the last couple of weeks at these current low levels. All right, let's see what happened with gold and silver. As I mentioned, gold closed excuse me, last week or a week ago at 11.93, and on Friday it closed at 11.98, so it was up a slight bit. Silver closed the week before at $14.03, and it closed Friday at $14.25. Currently, in after-hours trading, silver is down a penny at $14.24, and gold is down about $1 at $11.9780. Gold-silver ratio still remains high. It started the month, or it started 30 days ago, around 81.5 to 1. It reached a high around September 11th, around 85.5 to 1, and is currently, as of today, 84 and change. The gold-silver ratio has been going up consistently for the last 7 years. It started about 55 or so to 1 5 years ago, and has steadily climbed up to 84, 85 to 1. Let's talk about the Kavanaugh confirmation. I'm going to give you some background, let you know where we are, and then do some speculation as to what might happen with the confirmation hearing. Now, Brett Kavanaugh was appointed by Donald Trump. I don't think he was on one of the original lists, but he is what you would consider I don't know if you call it a rhino Republican favorite, but at least a conservative Republican favorite. He's considered very establishment, and for that reason they thought he would be an easy confirmation. And it looked like, with the control of the Senate, the Senate has Republican vote by 1, and if there's a tiebreaker, then you get Mike Pence to break the tie, and he gets confirmed. Now, knowing that, the Democrats do not want to have another judge on the court, because the position that Kavanaugh is replacing is Kennedy. Now, Kennedy essentially is a conservative justice, but on certain social positions, maybe about 25% of the time, he may vote with the left side. So he's considered a swing vote. He's not a sure vote. But what they're concerned about with Kavanaugh is he may become 100% of the time to the right, and that would shift the balance to 5 to 4. And then you have potentially retiring left judges like Ginsburg, so they're concerned. Kavanaugh gets in, Trump gets one more nominee, and now you have a not permanent, but you have, for quite the foreseeable future, 6 to 3 majority. Then they're concerned about overturning Roe versus Wade and other progressive decisions. So what happened with the Kavanaugh confirmation was sometime about 8 to 10 days ago, Senator Dianne Feinstein announced that she had a letter from a woman named Chrissy Ford, and that in that letter there were allegations that at a high school party in 1982 or so, that Justice Kavanaugh attempted some type of sexual assault on Miss Ford. And she released the she did not release the letter, and apparently she had the letter since July, but I think she sent it to the FBI. And I believe the FBI said, we're not going to do anything about this, but that the Senate said, well, we'll look into it. We will look into this, these allegations. And of course, there was some consternation about how Feinstein handled it, but of course, no one can deny that there is an element of politics in not only how the Democrats have raised the issue, but also how the Republicans have responded to the issue. So, of course, what gets lost in the issue is whether, if there is an issue, whether the issue actually gets the proper attention. And the Republicans had decided that they were going to allow the woman to be heard. And, of course, Kavanaugh had denied the charges. And then it got a little dicey because the lawyers for Ford, the woman making the accusation, was basically saying that it's not her job to corroborate her story, and they put a bunch of demands on how she may testify in front of the Senate. First, they said she's not going to testify until after an FBI investigation, which would mean that if the Senate would not vote until after she testified, then he obviously would not get confirmed for the current term coming up. Now, what's interesting about that is it's also possible that the Republicans could have said, well, you know what? We will, if the FBI decides to investigate, and they do investigate, we're going to go forward with the vote anyway. And if that's the case, and if somehow the justice system determined that he had committed this violation and this assault, well, then he always could be removed. Now, the Republicans are not willing to go down that path because, as I mentioned, they only have 51 votes, and they thought they might lose a vote or two because there would be some of the Republican senators may decide, well, that's not fair. We don't want to have a taint on the justice. We want to make sure that we hear from Ms. Ford. Now, the idea that Ms. Ford was going to come and testify became a contentious debate as to how she would testify. She then dropped the demand that the FBI have to investigate because that really became probably unrealistic. I mean, that's something that can happen in the future, but it is not going to happen in the period of time. And then it was also an obvious ploy just to delay the nomination. So they set up a bunch of demands as to whether of how she would appear. Now, generally, people who are bringing charges have to set out what happened. They have to present who they're going to present as evidence, not just their own accusation, because obviously an accusation is just an accusation. Usually has to be backed by some type of evidence or some type of eyewitness. But already, Ford's lawyer said that's not her job to corroborate her story, which would lead many to believe, well, okay, well, if that's how you're going to look at it, we're not going to take it seriously. But the Republican Party as a whole did not want to take the view that they weren't going to take the charges seriously because they may lose a couple of votes for people who want to take the charges seriously. So what happened, got even more of a twist here, was they went back and forth, and Grassley, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, started to set deadlines as to when the Ford attorneys would have to agree for her to appear. First they sent a Friday night, then they sent a Saturday night, and they just kept extending it. And they finally agreed to a Thursday hearing. Now, part of the request that they wanted on the Ford lawyers was that Kavanaugh would go first, and then she would have a chance to respond. Now, if you know anything about the legal system, you would never do that. That's not how the system works. What's he going to respond to? And in other words, they were trying to get the advantage of hearing him say something, and whatever he said, then they can try to contradict or attack it. But when you make an accusation, you generally, the party making the accusation has to build their case that such an event happened, and they have to present that, and then the person accused gets to defend himself. It's all the whole guilty until proven innocent. Excuse me. And essentially, the accuser has to prove in a criminal case or a civil case their case. Now, this is not a criminal or a civil case, but it is something where you wish to be believed, and the spirit of the legal system does apply to congressional and Senate hearings. Now, to add politics to it, one of the reasons this whole thing is being done on the politics side really to influence 1 to 2 or 3 senators. That's all it's designed to do. They know that 48, 49 of the senators on the Republican side are going to vote for Kavanaugh, and they know that most of the senators on the Democratic side, they're also going to vote against them. What the Democrats are concerned about is they may lose Democratic senators in red states, especially those that voted heavily for Trump in 2016. For example, McCaskill. What they were trying to do, one theory is that if you taint Kavanaugh enough, then the red state Democratic senators could be forgiven for perhaps voting against Kavanaugh, other than just voting against him because all the Democrats voted against him. McCaskill very cleverly decided that maybe this Ford ploy, we don't know how it's going to play out, and there's some more information on this. Maybe she did not want to use that as her reason not to vote for Kavanaugh. So she came out and she said, I'm not going to vote for Kavanaugh. But it's not because of the Ford allegations. She said it's because Kavanaugh accepts dark and anonymous money. A very brilliant political move, because now if it turns out that the Ford accusations don't hold water, then she would be in the same situation if she just voted no, because then she'd be perceived by her constituents as just voting along with the Democrats. And when they came up with this Ford accusation, she just went along with it. And in a red state, a Democrat cannot be seen as just going along with the Democratic vote, because they're supposed to be representing a red state and they're supposed to have some type of independence. What just flashed up on my screen was Democratic, and this has been predicted by many Democrats, investigating a second accusation against Brett Kavanaugh. So if you are a casual observer, you might not think it's suspicious that you get these types of accusations at the last minute. By the same token, you also, if you are a casual observer, you may think, well, if there's something there, I want to hear about it. So there's a fine line between, is it an obvious political ploy, or is there something there? And obviously, when you have 2 accusers, well, that makes it less than just, well, we'll just dismiss this one. Well, wait a minute, there's a second one, and I wouldn't be surprised if they have a third one by the end of the night. But what's interesting, before we get into what ended up happening, is I have just seen so many people who have decided, I mean, some senators on the Democratic side just come out and they say, we believe her. Now, it's hard to believe anybody that you haven't spoken to, haven't met, haven't read documents, haven't done an investigation. And at the same time, it's also impossible to say, I believe the other guy. Actually, you don't know anything. You don't know if Kavanaugh, we don't know, one doesn't know whether Brett Kavanaugh did anything, and one also doesn't know, if you're for him or if you're against him, that he did do it. You really have no idea. I think it's irresponsible for a senator to say, we believe Kavanaugh or we believe Ford. Now, those are saying we believe Kavanaugh are saying, well, he's got an impeccable record. He's got all these 75 women favoring him. Okay. But that doesn't mean when he was 17 that he didn't do something. And then on the Democrat side, they just, and it's obvious, the people believe what they want to believe. They believe in their candidate, but none of these people would ever get picked for a jury because they've already decided that they believe who one or the other. Now, the whole problem with all this is, and I'm sure this isn't lost on the Democrats as part of the strategy, is you're not going to get a full hearing as to what happened before the end of the week so that they can seat a new justice. And that's exactly what they want. And they could say, well, it's justified. If we're going to have a lifetime appointment, we can't have, we can't just rush through this. Now, obviously they can't dismiss that, but these accusations were known long ago, back in July. So if they really were interested in figuring out what was going to, figuring out the truth, whether there's any, validity to this, they could have raised it. But they realized, well, we'll just hold on to this and we'll raise it when there's really not enough time to look into it and then say, hey, hold on a minute, what's the rush? This is a lifetime appointment. We have to get to the bottom of it. Now, there's been some, and again, here's more drama. Senator Hirono, now she's from Hawaii. I mean, this is nothing. I mean, she doesn't know. Senator Gillibrand doesn't. No one knows whether to believe her or whether to believe Kavanaugh. But then she says, it's the men in this country who are perpetuating these kinds of actions. I want to say to the men in this country, just shut up and step up. Do the right thing for a change. Now, I don't think all the men in the country have anything to do with the accusations or even the ability to influence how the Senate is going to respond to the allegations, how they're going to investigate this. So, I don't know, that kind of comment, it's not even irresponsible. It just doesn't make any sense because as a male, I have no influence whatsoever whether I can do the right thing or not. I mean, I can shut up, but I don't understand how it's going to help whatsoever. And now, okay, so they went through all this thing. They want to have the right terms, whether the accuser would testify or not. And then they started to say, well, we not only do we want him to go first, we don't want to be cross-examined, we don't want to have a lawyer in the room. And basically, they were trying to say, we'll testify, but only under these conditions. And then they were trying to say that if we don't accept these conditions, then the men are bullying her. Now, it got a little crazy because they started saying things like, if you don't just believe her, then you're bullying her, and that you shouldn't second guess her, and that she doesn't have to present evidence. She doesn't have to corroborate what's going on. It seems very strange because that's not, you do, there's a point where, of course, you give the benefit of the doubt to somebody in a pathway to make an accusation, but you can't expect not to be cross-examined. You can't expect somebody to defend themselves and start asking probing questions like, well, was it 1982 or was it 1983? Was it at this party or that party? Was this person there or that person there? They basically were trying to say, well, no, that would be bullying. We can't have any of that. Well, apparently the story was, I think there were 4 people that were supposedly at the party. And 5 people at the party. And 4 of them were male, including Kavanaugh and including Ford. And the other 3 were guys. And they got statements from 2 of the guys to say, no, this didn't happen. This didn't happen. So now you have 2 guys saying it didn't happen and Kavanaugh saying it didn't happen. And then you got Ford saying it happened. Okay. Well, then last night, it turns out, it wasn't 4 guys and 1 woman. It was 3 guys and 2 women. Or I'd say guys and gals because they were kids, 15 and 17 years old. Well, one of the women, who's a woman now, who was the woman who presumably was the 3rd guy, was actually the second woman, said, and she is her lifelong friend. Her name happens to be Leland. What the heck is her name here? Leland something or other. Anyway, she said that didn't happen, don't remember it, and doesn't even know who Kavanaugh was at the time. However, she said she believes Ford. Okay. Now, she's a lifelong friend. Now, this, in a normal court, would probably end any type of investigation because you would say you have, obviously, the initial he said, she said, which is always difficult, and that's always generally a stalemate unless you can corroborate with other evidence. But then you have the testimony of, or the signed statements that get sent to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which are made under penalty of perjury. You have the two guys saying didn't happen, and then you have the gal saying didn't happen. Well, now you have three people saying didn't happen, three witnesses, and then you have Kavanaugh saying didn't happen, and now you have Ford standing alone. Now, I would think at that point, you'd roll up your tent and say, okay, I know it happened, I can't prove it happened, and you're not going to prove it to, not in a day's testimony to senators, because they're not there. I mean, they have a horse in the race. They may want to hear the evidence, but as far as I can see, you're going to have Republican senators thinking, okay, say what you got to say. Okay, then we're going to vote against you. A vote for Kavanaugh. And then the Democrats are going to say, yeah, she's believable. We believe what she's saying. We have to believe her. That's not a real, again, those people would never be picked for a jury. You wouldn't pick the Republican senators and the Democratic senators to listen to this and to come up with an objective analysis. So they're not going to come up with an objective analysis. Again, what it's geared toward is to try to sway a Republican or two or a Democrat to either hold the line or a Republican to switch over. That's all this is going to do. It's not going to determine whether Kavanaugh did anything. It's not going to determine whether Ford is got a valid complaint or whether she's making it up. You're not going to get to that. What you are going to get, though, are a lot of opinions that she's lying or that she's telling the truth, but you're not going to get a conclusion. So that's where that stands now. You have, and of course they're going to bring, we just mentioned there's updating breaking news that there's another accusation. So the question becomes, does he get confirmed? It's probably 50-50 now because, again, it's going to be down to one or two senators how they're going to vote. If he doesn't get confirmed, that means then you're not going to get another nominee, a Trump nominee, probably for 2 more years because, or at least 6 months, because if the Democrats take the House and the Senate, well, then they won't approve anybody. If they don't take the Senate, then Trump will probably immediately move to nominate Coney Barrett, but she won't be seated this term. Amy Coney Barrett, I think is her name. And she's worse for the Democrats because she is very much pro-life type of jurist, and they probably try to stall that for the longest time. But again, if the Republicans hold the Senate, even if they lose the House, well, then she would pass, and they'd have to go through the same, they'd have to find something on her that would make her not fit. But for on the Republican side, they'd have a lot of time to just, the Republicans, the Democrats can try to stall that, but with new information about her or charges, but if they have the votes, they'll be able to get her through. If the Democrats win the Senate, they won't get anyone through. Okay, so that's one big story to follow next week, and that has implications for the midterm elections. It has implications just for political turmoil as we go forward. All right, let's move on now to the other big stories of the week. This was underplayed. South Korean leader says he'll discuss with Trump he'll discuss with Trump the goal of declaring end of the Korean War by year end. That's kind of the good news, and normally that type of news depresses gold and silver because, for better or for worse, gold and silver does better when there's a potential for war, not when there's peace. But this type of announcement really had no effect whatsoever. PayPal terminates its contract with Alex Jones, and Fortune says with Alex Jones conspiracy site, InfoWars, where they put that in there. Now that is a troubling development, because we've talked about how being deplatformed from social media is a form of disenfranchisement, but this is the whole cashless society. This is, you can't do commerce without having a payment processor, without a credit card. And again, when people complain about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is the mark of the beast, and Bitcoin is the devil, and Bitcoin is the cashless society, I've been saying, you already have the cashless society. You already have a centralized payment system. And you just can see in this example how they can toss you off. Actually, Bitcoin is good for this kind of thing. They can't kick you off Bitcoin, and Alex Jones may be forced, like WikiLeaks was, to take its money in Bitcoin. So when people use this argument against Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as somehow ushering in a cashless society and a totalitarian society, it's already, the infrastructure is already there with PayPal and your bank. They can kick you out of your bank account. They can seize your bank account. They can cut off your credit card. They can cut off your PayPal. And they cut off his PayPal. I mean, the products he sells aren't hateful. He sells, I don't know, supplements and books, and the products are just products. So it shows how, if you're worried about a cashless society and the issues, well, it clearly exists with the current digital payment systems that we have. There was an article out that said Clinton would beat Trump in a landslide. This is a poll in 2016 rerun. Now, this was in Bloomberg yesterday. Trump to investigate Google, Facebook under new executive orders, according to Bloomberg. Now, apparently what they want to do there is investigate them for antitrust and see if they're doing any monopolizing. That may get the ball rolling, but you're not going to get, unless there's some other type of probably unconstitutional executive order, you're not going to get any change in social media giant behavior by that. There'll be a lot of litigation if they do antitrust litigation, but nothing's going to happen from that. So we'll have to wait and see. That's supposed to come out next week. Jack Dorsey says Twitter's so liberal that conservative employees don't feel safe to express their opinions, says Jack Dorsey. And then he says, well, that's not good. Look, anytime someone says something at their company isn't right, but they're the CEO, they're in charge of making that right. Now, Jeff Sessions, you don't hear much from him, but he came out and he gave a speech. I don't know if he's going to do anything. He says that the Justice Department won't back down against colleges and university campuses that are stifling free speech. He called them bullies, but given his track record on doing anything, I think he might have been blowing off some hot air. Also, you talk about, again, this has nothing to do with Bitcoin or Litecoin or cryptocurrencies. Google still allowing third-party application developers and companies to scan your Gmail accounts. And the third parties can share their data as long as they're transparent with users. It's amazing how people have focused on cryptocurrencies as somehow being the mark of the beast, when, in a sense, they're just an extension of the digital world in which we live in, which already has the capability of tracking and tracing everything you do from your bank account. You know, the cash is very little used compared to the digital transactions that you make on your debit card, your credit card, or your transactions through PayPal, and all of your social interactions, I would say now, is probably 70-80% online and not in person. So again, that's all trackable and traceable, storable. It used to be you meet your neighbors, you go down to the coffee shop. That wasn't taped, recorded, and everyone would remember that you said X, Y, or Z on September 22nd, 1996, or whatever day it might have been. Well, today, all your social interactions, or not all of them, but all of your online social actions, are all stored, tracked, and traced. Now, Apple says they're going to give you a trust rating based on your phone call and email habits. Well, what is that? You never would get a trust rating from the conversations you had over your neighbor's fence or what you said at the local deli or whatever. And there's more evidence of political bias at Google. They discussed a search tweak to bias the Trump travel ban results. I mean, it's also, not only is the digital world able to track and trace you in this manner, but it's companies that can do it, and centralized companies, which makes it even more dangerous because pretty much everyone has something to do with Google, Facebook, Twitter, or Apple. It's not like it's decentralized and it's in 1,000 different companies. No, it's all on 3 or 4 different companies, master servers where they have access to it. They can search all that data. So people complaining about Bitcoin as being the, and I'm not defending Bitcoin. I'm just saying that's not it's not a reason to be against Bitcoin because somehow it's going to usher in a digital nightmare, or it's going to, in a sense, it possibly could help retain some privacy. I mean, the only way you can retain privacy is going 100% off the grid. But if you're going to be on the grid, one of the ways to avoid some of it, or at least avoid getting kicked off, is by having cryptocurrencies, I would imagine. Now, the problem with cryptocurrencies, they're not as efficient as having a PayPal account because we cover the prices here. They go up and down. In fact, let's take a quick look at the prices. Right now, Bitcoin is $66.85. Earlier today, it was almost $6,800. Then it was down to $6,600. We can go up and down a few $100s in a matter of minutes. And Bitcoin Cash, or Bcash, 47. That was above 500. Ethereum at 243. And Litecoin at about 61. All right. Let's see what else we got in the stories. Tesla. Elon Musk. Tesla stock drops on report that the company is facing a criminal probe over those tweets that he made, saying he was going to take the company private. Out of the blue, boom, just says it, gives a price. Anyone knows anything about securities laws, you don't just announce stuff. You have to do a press release, or if you normally announce stuff online, you have to go through certain channels. You have to give a certain amount of information. You don't put out some type of half cryptic tweet that you're going to do this and you've already got the money and here's the price. And then generally you're supposed to file with the SEC. And he didn't even discuss it with the board. So now they're saying Elon Musk may have criminal liability. Now, the whole Russian investigation thing is still going on. Lisa Page testified, apparently, that there was no proof of collusion or even evidence of it when they started the Mueller probe. And I guess that's what led Trump to believe, or already has believed, why he needs to release these documents relating to the Russia probe, because they would show that it was based on the FISA application, which didn't have much information other than a lot of circular information from the Steele dossier, which wasn't confirmed, and then they confirmed it because there was a story in the press about it, and then went back and forth, and they would self-confirm the story, but then never really, again, it goes back to like what I say with the gold-backed yuan. You have an unsourced story in the Nikkei Asian Review, and then you have all the gold-pumping channels saying, well, it was in the Asian Nikkei Review. Well, the story never had any legs in the first place, but then 12 other channels say they repeat the story, so everybody thinks that that has somehow legitimized the story when it never had any legitimacy in the first place. And of course, Trump picked up on this. He says, Lisa Page testimony, no evidence of collusion before the Mueller appointment. And that would normally be a big deal, but it wasn't picked up by any of the media. That's probably because, as we've seen, now, there's a group of people who, you know what, I'm going to cut this short because I got cut off on the stream again, and lucky I think I caught it, but I don't like this. This live streaming has become, almost every time I do a live stream, the stream cuts out. I don't know why it happens, but it does. So anyway, we've been on for 40 minutes. I didn't get to all the topics. I'll try to pick up on some of them during the week. We'll be back again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. I would like to find an alternative streaming, but right now YouTube seems to be the only game in town for this type of format. And it is easier for me, and it's more enjoyable, and it's probably better for you because you get to ask questions than for me to just find time to do a video, post the charts. It's better to have this interactive forum, but I can't trust that it's going to work. So I'm going to sign off now. And well, I'll try to take your questions here. I'll see what's in the before I sign off, and hopefully I don't get cut off again. Carl Joseph DeMarco, we can hear you shuffling. Are you dragging your foot, Igor? No. You know, it might be. I think it's the mouse pad. What I was doing was looking at the different articles, so I was probably sliding the mouse pad on the table, and you would hear it through the microphone. So thanks for letting me know that. Happy fall. All is one now. 8 o'clock and sometimes 8:30. Yeah, if I get delayed. Maybe JP Morgan needs to take a capital loss for their taxes. Very little, though. I mean, 3 million ounces of silver? I don't think so. Nomadic Giant says, hola, all the way from Mexico. And we don't have many comments here at all. Annabelle, everybody's taking their comments away. American Supertramp, Tesla's a fake auto company, not like can make a product on time. I have no idea how that company ever got the market cap it got, and I'm still astounded that it has what it has. It's not investment advice. I don't buy or sell Tesla stock. I'm just astounded by any company that makes no money for years and has a multi-billion-dollar market cap. Unbelievable. All right, well, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you tomorrow night.